Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening, wherever you're joining us from across the world. And if you're in East Africa, Karibu. I am Kevin Simiu, and on behalf of the Aga Khan University, I'm delighted to welcome you to Connecting AKU webinar series. This series shares AKU's transformative work, research, new initiatives, and opportunities that are helping us to make the world a better place during the pandemic and beyond. In today's webinar, Dr. Mansoor Saleh, the founding director of AKU's Cancer Center in Nairobi, will be sharing how AKU is responding to the challenges facing women with cancer. Moderated by Dr. Mercy Korir, a medical journalist with KTN News, we will explore the state of the disease in East Africa and AKU's ambition to invest in research and ensure that patients in East Africa are benefiting from the most current knowledge in cancer prevention, early detection, and treatment. Today's session will run for 60 minutes. Dr. Korir will moderate a conversation with the panelists for another 30 minutes. And thereafter, we will take questions from the audience. To ask a question, you can email connecting.webinars@aku.edu. And without wasting much time, over to you, Dr. Korir.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I think this is a timely conversation, and especially for me, what I like most about this is a drug called hope, because I think the place where we are as a globe, really, we need as much hope as we can. And so this conversation, though giving hope to cancer, which is a whole other pandemic, not the current one that we have, I think for me is very timely and very encouraging to have this conversation. So everyone, welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I'm delighted to be having this conversation with Professor Mansoor Saleh. I'll be introducing him shortly, and then we'll start this conversation. I'd just like to reiterate what Kevin has said, that for you to ask any questions, please drop us an email at connecting.webinars@aku.edu. We'll be delighted to have some of your questions answered and addressed by Professor Mansoor. I'm a medical journalist for the last 3 years, let's say 4 years thereabout, but previously I've been working as a medical doctor. And one of the most common questions I get is why did I change from, the lucrative and noble profession of being a doctor to journalism? But I still see myself as a doctor, but one who now just talks to people on TV, on radio, writing newspapers. So I still see it as a trade of, practicing medicine. And this is one of the forms where we sit down with experts in the field to deliberate and delve into details of some of the issues that are plaguing the society health-wise. And Professor Mansoor, I'll ask him to give us more details about him. But the first time I met Mansoor was at the Aga Khan University Hospital in Nairobi. And you are going there to actually just record show about what AKU was doing in the COVID times. And I was fascinated by Professor Mansoor's journey, which I see it as a loop, coming from East Africa, going to Germany, to the US, and coming back home to bring us this hope. So Professor Mansoor, you can just tell us a little bit more about this loop that you've gone around from East Africa to the rest of the world and back to East Africa. The floor is yours.
Thank you for having me. You know my life well. It is true. It is a loop. It is coming back home. I received a scholarship from the German government a long time ago when I was a medical student in Germany. And they said, one of our biggest concerns is that when we give scholarships to students from the developing world, they get seduced in the developed world, they never go back. And I always felt a little bit guilty that I was one of those who got seduced by the developed world, but I feel good that I'm back, that will go back and talk to the German government who gave me part of my scholarship for medical school to say I did come back to Africa. So I was born in Africa, not very far away from here. I'm a product of the Aga Khan school system. Early education, middle school, high school, I went to Iringa. And then I left here to go to Germany. In many ways, I was adopted by an incredibly noble family in Heidelberg, in Germany. They took care of me like my own parents. So I have German parents and I have my own native parents. And I lived in Germany, in Heidelberg, went to medical school there, did research at the Max Planck Institute, which is like the NIH of the German institution. There were 2 Nobel Prize winners at the Max Planck Institute that talked about research in targeting cancer. So when I left Germany to go to the US to study further in internal medicine, I chose a vocation of oncology. And I had a very good teacher, Ella Bullia, who told me about targeting cancers and sparing normal tissue. And it reminded me of those Nobel Prize winners at the Max Planck Institute where I did some work. She said, that's what I want to do. I want to target cancers to be able to spare normal tissue, and that should be really the way we should treat cancer. Mm-hmm. And I was inspired to come back to Kenya by 2 quotes of the Chancellor. And I have them in my office, and I want to read them to you because I don't want to misquote him. In 2011, not far away from here, Mercy, where you met me, when he opened up the Heart and Cancer Center building, it was a building, he talked about 2 things. He said, in the developing world, we have sadly shortchanged research and education. So I said, I've done research, I've been educated, I should come back to do research and promote specialty education to AKU. And the other quote, and I know it when I was a child, His Highness, nearly about 30, 40 years ago, said the following, and I should read this because that's very profound. It really touched me and said, yes, I had to do something. He said, there are those who enter the world in such poverty that they're deprived of both the means and motivation to improve their lot. I didn't think he meant financial poverty, he meant general poverty. Unless they are touched by the spark which ignites the spirit of individual enterprise and determination, they will only sink back into renewed apathy, degradation, and despair. It is for us who are more fortunate to provide that spark. I see me as the us. For those who have, much is expected, and I've come back home in many ways to give back for that has been given to me. So that is my circle.
So why women's cancer? I mean, every men and women suffer alike, but why the focus on women's cancer?
I think it is so important to realize that the woman has a central role in the family, the nucleus of family. She's the nurturer, the educator, the caretaker. You lose a woman, you lose the nucleus of a family, the nucleus of society. Women bear an inordinate burden of disease. The biggest cause of death early on is death at childbirth. Then you have infections, and now we have non-communicable diseases, heart disease, cancer, diabetes. And I felt like as we begin this journey to address research and education, we should have one focus. And because women bear an inordinate burden of cancer, cervical cancer, breast cancer, ovarian cancer, our first mission should be the Center for Women's Cancer to address specifically cervical, breast, ovarian cancer, and that's what we'll do. And thereafter, we will focus prostate cancer, and then we will also focus on brain disorders, neurologic disorders. But I thought for us at AKU, East Africa, and Nairobi, breast cancer, cervical cancer, ovarian cancer, women's cancer should be our first focus because of the central role that women play in our life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so where I trained at the University of Nairobi, in the clinical years, we used to have what we call tumor boards. I think it was either Tuesday or Thursday morning where we sit and discuss, a cancer patient, and you have all specialties, represented to address and give solutions to the patient. Then fast forward, and I came to practice, and I realized that in practice, this doesn't happen. The patient will see Dr. Mansoor today, then you'll think, no, I think you need to see a pathologist, then you send them across town to something else. Then from there, somebody else thinks, I think you need to see a nutritionist, they send them across town to another nutritionist. What the multidisciplinary team in cancer care at the cancer center, is it what it is trying to address? Or is it just another way of doing things?
No, it's a good question because I know you visited us. So when I came to AKU Nairobi, You're right. Every specialty saw their own patients. We do have a tumor board where we discuss the patients. Their cases are discussed, but we do not see the actual patient. So in July of this year, for the past 5 months, every new breast cancer patient, we begin with breast cancer, who has been diagnosed at AKU gets a multidisciplinary consultation with the medical oncologist, radiation therapist, surgeon, nurse, clinician, 5 or 6 of us. We just had our NBC today, Thursday. We had 7 women, one from Rwanda, one from Burundi, and 4 women, 5 women from Kenya. And we see the patient, we talk with them, we give them their journey. It's not that just surgeon saying, let's take out your breast or do a lumpectomy and you'll get radiation, you'll be well. We go through the entire journey. And out of the 7 women we saw today, 2 women needed genetic counseling. 2 women asked for nutritional counseling. And we just talked with a young woman, Aliyah, in London, who will be doing nutritional counseling for our patients via Zoom. And out of these 7 women, 5 needed some psychosocial counseling. Mm-hmm. We could only do that because we saw the women live in front of us as a multi-specialty team, and saw her live as opposed to the tumor board where you discuss the case on the board. So we are probably the first in East Africa that have a multidisciplinary breast cancer clinic for all our breast cancer patients. And the next will be obviously cervical, GYN, prostate. It is the new way that you do not deal with cancer in isolation as one specialty.
This way of handling cancer seems to have more benefit to the patient. Then why is it not being practiced across board? Why is it that it is something new, yet it sounds like, that is very patient-centric. It puts the patient at the center of everything else.
You're absolutely right. I think we are trained as silos. The surgeon does surgery, the chemotherapist does chemotherapy, the radiation therapist gives radiation therapy. But the world is like a shopping mall. You need a little bit about everything, which is why you have Carrefour in Nairobi. You got meat, it's right there. You want fruit, it's right there. You don't go to different spaces, which is why we see people gravitating to those places. I think it's a matter of old style. We are moving people's cheeses. The surgeon wants to do surgery and move along and go on with life. The chemotherapist wants to give chemotherapy and not worry about radiation. I think we want to change the paradigm, and we want to set the example for us across the AKU network, but also for this country, that every woman, every man should have a multidisciplinary approach to their disease, not just heart disease, cancer, other diseases as well, because it is really the whole body that is to be taken care of. Nutrition, psychosocial counseling, and therapy all go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. So from your experience and what you have seen, particularly in Kenya, in East Africa, what is usually the biggest burden that women with cancer have? I know, and I'm just thinking probably it's nutrition and psychosocial need for psychosocial support, because when you're explaining the 7 women that you saw today, it seems like the physical aspects of the cancer is sort of covered. So is it the case that it's all these other aspects that we seem to neglect is what really the patients are looking for?
So I could tell you about, and today happened to be the MBC clinic, of all 7 women, they all came with their husbands. They also came with somebody who they trusted. I find it very encouraging that the husbands in Kenya take this seriously and they accompany their wives or their loved ones or their mothers when they come to see the oncologist, the radiation therapist, and the surgeon. But I think what I've been disheartened is, out of the 7 women, 3/4 of them, intelligent women, waited before they came to us, at least 3 to 5 months. We do not practice early detection. We do not do mammography. We may do self-examination, but we neglect the lesion. I think this is where the public sector needs to stand up and provide mammography services for everyone. We have units out there, but people do not avail themselves of those units. That's one thing. And then the question of the diagnostic pathway. Out of the 7 women, I think it's timely conversation. Half of them saw a physician who did not take care of them adequately. Antibiotic, wait and watch.
Um, Dr. Mansoor, I don't know if your network has dropped.
Can you hear me? Yeah, I think we
Oh,
lost power.
you there. Okay, all right. Okay, we seem to be having an issue with, oh no.
Yes, we got it.
No, you're back, good.
The one thing I've learned in Kenya is it takes a little while for the generator to realize the electricity went off. So we have a generator here. It takes it a while to click in. But
Okay, good.
as I was
At least
saying,
you're back, okay.
the, the, the drugs we use in Kenya have been developed in North America, Europe. They've been tested on North American, European women. We've never tested them in Kenyan women. How do they work for our patients who are ethnically different, genetically different, who may metabolize drugs differently? So I go back to the Chancellor's second point, research. We have to do research on our patients who are recipients of drugs that have been developed elsewhere. If these drugs are going to be used for our patients, they should be tested on our patients. So that is the paradigm. And I think part of it is educating ourselves, educating the public, educating the women, and then educating the medical workforce to pay attention to these kinds of lumps and bumps, be it breast cancer, prostate cancer, ovarian cancer. It's just a matter of educating the public.
Mhm. Okay. You mentioned about the delay in making the diagnosis, where the patient delayed. So is it that the patients delay, or is it that they go to multiple doctors and by the time it is diagnosed, it has been delayed, or is it both of them? What is it that makes it hard for us to diagnose breast cancer, for example, early? Because it's one of the cancers that is treatable. So what are these components that really are doing a disservice to us?
So as I look at it, in the past 5 months, since we've had the multidisciplinary breast cancer clinic, we've been seeing about 10 women a month, about 50 so far. I can tell you that at least half of them delayed on their own. They thought it would go away. They forgot it, which is where I really also put the responsibility on your partner, because they must feel that lump as well. Talk to them. The other half, after a while of delay, came back to some healthcare provider who then neglected it or treated it inappropriately. And ultimately, some friends say, go to AKU or go somewhere else. So I think it's a multidisciplinary problem. Patient awareness is one, but also, and it's true what you ask. They go to the mganga first and then go to the next door neighbor, what would you do, etc. But I think it is self-fulfilling. It's a part of denial because cancer is a scary thought. But what I want to tell patients is the earlier you come, the likelihood of cure is increased manifold. Early detection has a role to play. Prevention has some role to play. If you come to us early, we have targeted therapy today that will save your lives. The earlier you come, the better you are. And that's the awareness we need to really drill into our country folks here.
What are those survival, let me call them success rates? What are they depending on the time that somebody comes? I think it would be good for me to know if I come when it is very early, I have such a percentage degree of success. And when it's late, this is the success rate.
Great. I mean, I think we couldn't have chosen a better day. So there's a young woman, 41 years old. Her lesion was, we picked it up, it's about 2 centimeters. She was one who came very early, within a month. Mammography shows a lesion 2 centimeters. Biopsy done at AKU, early breast cancer, receptor positive, which means it is fed by female hormones, ERPR. So if you block the female hormones in this patient, it's a treatment. She will get surgery, lumpectomy, preserve her breast, radiation therapy to irradiate the rest of the breast so that any other cells in the remaining breast are eradicated, and she'll get hormone therapy. She has 3 children. She says, I do not want any more children. So we'll give her treatment that makes her postmenopausal, and then give her a postmenopausal anti-estrogen, anti-progesterone hormone therapy. Her 10-year survival is 98%. 2 centimeter lesion, negative lymph nodes, ERPR positive, 98%. If the same woman comes to us, positive breast lesion, positive lymph node, spread to the lymph node, 10-year survival goes down to 50%. If you wait one more step, if it has spread from the axilla to somewhere else, metastatic disease, 10-year survival, 10%. Makes a big difference.
It does.
And we want the women to come early. The same thing is also for prostate cancer, colon cancer, cervical cancer. It is really the matter of early detection allows you to have a better chance of survival.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so we have certain forms of treatment. Chemotherapy is there. We have radiotherapy option, surgical options. Are all of these options available at AKU? As in, can people just come and say, hey, I have this, can you treat me?
Yes, I think when I look at it, I came from North America in January. Out of the 50 breast cancer patients we saw here in the last 5 months, every one of those, not just me, my colleagues, the surgeon, Dr. Wasiki, Dr. Mutebi, Dr. Hassan, Angela Waweru, radiation therapist, we provided those 50 women the same care I would have provided at a major comprehensive cancer center in Birmingham, Alabama, where I trained. Except for one woman who came from Burundi, came quite late. The treatment we want to offer her is available here, not available in Burundi. So I could say that for women's cancer, we are as good as any other place on earth at AKU, but I'm also sure at other places in Kenya as well. The only trouble we have is if only we could get the patients to us early, which is where the public sector has to reinforce the fact that mammography should be available to every woman who needs it, regardless of ability to pay. And if you have an abnormal mammogram, the system, the public system, working with the private system, should allow every woman to have the best of care. We have it available. Accessibility. You know, the Chancellor still says, we have to have impact. We have to have quality. We have to be relevant. We have to provide access. Those are the 4 fundamental principles that we abide by at AKU. And I think we will need to have a public-private partnership to really exercise those role model principles.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what will it take yourself and your team to realize, you know, what I tend to think of it as homegrown medicines for us. So this is a lot of clinical research, clinical trials to look at what medicines work for us. It could be cancer treatment, it could be for other diseases. What will it take to have that so that at least now when we look at, you know, when you look at the side effects and, you know, the drug profile of medicines, most of the time, when you look at the African race, it's a very small percentage, or they say it hasn't been tested. What will it take for us to be there significantly?
Great question. I should tell the audience, I did not ask you this question I did not tell you to ask me this question. You're asking them out of the free will because you're a physician, a good reporter. Let me have Innocent show you some images. Innocent, can you share? Let me show you our clinical research unit. This research unit is a product of funding from the hospital, but funding from well-wishers and donors. It is the first clinical research unit of its kind in the whole of East Africa. Let me show you some images. We just opened it about last month. And the motto for the clinical research unit is the drug called hope, Tumaini. That was also the motto of my research unit in Birmingham, Alabama. When you come in, you have the logo of the Aga Khan Hospital, you have the logo of the Aga Khan University. You see that's the reception. I don't show you here, but we have a fish tank donated by a donor. I wanted to have a fish tank in my unit. I did not get it in Alabama. Here we have a fish tank. Innocent. This is the exam room, just as good as anywhere else in North America. Next slide. This is where you get your chemotherapy and your study agent. This is where you sit, and the window on the left you see is the view you see. The drug called hope is basically saying, we care, we are here for you, and more importantly, the fact that we will have novel therapy that has been tested in the West. We would like to test it on our patients. Do they metabolize it differently? Do they have different toxicities? Every breast cancer woman who came to the MBC in the last 5 months will take their tumor, genetically profile it, and say, what genes are responsible for your cancer? and then find a drug called hope, in a clinical trial to block that particular pathway. It's all experimental. But one day, the contribution of Kenyans will increase, exactly minority patients on the clinical trials, and the drugs will apply not just to North Americans, but to minorities as well. To give you an example, at UAB, we studied the profile of this very aggressive breast cancer called triple negative breast cancer, ER, PR negative, HER2 negative. We took 40 samples from Kenya, 40 from African Americans in Alabama, and 40 from Caucasians in Alabama, and looked at the gene profile. We identified 15 genes in African patients, which were either upregulated, increased, or decreased compared to the African Americans or the Caucasians. We are different. If we can identify those genes, block that pathway, we have a treatment for a patient unique to East Africa, maybe exactly for East Africa at all, completely for Africa for that matter. The Clinical Research Unit, which is a product of donations from well-wishers and funders, is exactly what we need. And this is the beginning. I think the doors opened about a month ago. We had your colleague come, you were busy, but I think this is where we will do research to study novel drugs, and we will give Tumaini to our patients.
Okay, so this will involve volunteers. I don't know, Kenyans or, yeah, I think maybe I could speak for Africans, are a bit skeptical about anything that is testing, experiment, you know. They're like, I don't think I want to be a guinea pig or to be used in that. Are you finding that kind of resistance and attitude?
Well, Mercy, I'm going to take you to task, because if you had attended the roundtable this morning between 8 and 9, because the Clinical Research Unit, starting January or December, will do the first COVID vaccine trial in East Africa. We will run it from here. So we had a roundtable with Vice Provost Alex Awiti, Dean Atwoli, a scientist from Sanofi in France, to talk about the COVID vaccine that we will be doing here at AKU, and exactly those questions. Is the public suspicious? Not only that, are even the intelligentsia uninformed when they make uninformed statements in the press? And you know exactly what I'm talking about, where some high-level individual says vaccines are not for us, etc., etc. In East Africa, we have countries that deny the existence of COVID. So we have the same issues both at the grassroots level, at the common men, but also the intelligent people who deny certain facts. But as was said today by Dean Atwoli, says, yes, there is suspicion. We have been misused in the past, in the colonial days. But today, the scientists and the researchers are African, Kenyans. We will assess those issues, make sure that what we give to our countrymen is safe. It's still experimental. Our countrymen hopefully will believe us. And Vice Provost Awiti said, to be able to explain the COVID vaccine to the public, make sure you can explain it to my grandmother. If she understands and accepts, everybody else will. Our message about cancer should be relevant to the grandmothers in Kenya. If they are, they'll be relevant to all Kenyans. I hear the same thing about guinea pigs in America. I think the word is not guinea pigs. The word is a subject who's willing to say, I'm willing to try this experimental therapy. I understand the logic behind it. If it works, I am so happy. I will be ecstatic. If it does not help me, it'll help somebody else, and that is my contribution. That is what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. And so far, what has been the feedback or the reaction that you're getting?
Well, we'll find out. The COVID vaccine starts in a month. We will be drumming up support. Cancer research studies are beginning. I think there's much enthusiasm. We did a study recently, the Clinical Research Unit did a study recently 4 months ago for a drug called tocilizumab for severe COVID pneumonia. We put the most number of patients in Africa. Successful study, worked well, it's been published in the New England Journal of Medicine. Dr. Rina Shah was the PI, and people came. It was a study whereby people got placebo. It was a placebo-controlled trial. There is no easy word for placebo. Mercy, do you know the word for placebo? What is placebo in Swahili?
We had actually
We
gotten
talked
that.
about it. We talked about it.
I
Yes.
forgot it.
You forgot it. Tell me. Innocent, what's the word for placebo?
Tibabwete.
Tibabwete. It's very complicated. So we explained to the patient who was severely ill with COVID pneumonia, a life-threatening illness, but they agreed to go to a placebo-controlled trial to say, this will help us decide, is this drug better? Then just standard of care is better. It worked well. I'm very hopeful that Kenyans who have cancer will look at research as a way to help themselves, but help move science forward, specifically as it relates to us, because we are different than others in terms of genetic profile, etc.
So what kind of support would you be looking for from the different players, from media, where I come from the public itself, from fellow doctors? What kind of support then do you, or will you be looking for from, these representatives who are our audiences here today?
So you saw the unit. It is a well-furbished unit that can do high-quality research. We would like to have individuals who will give their time to us. So we would like to recruit people who will give their time, volunteers, but also professionals, who will give us their knowledge. So we'll be recruiting a young woman, breast cancer expert from Alberta. We'll be recruiting a woman from Kenya, a breast cancer expert, a nutritionist from London coming to us via Zoom, a psychosocial counselor here from Kenya, and we have at AKU the Institute for Mind and Brain that will be established to do the issue about psychosocial aspects of disease, but they will also be endeavoring in cancer. So we need people who are willing to give their time. We need people who are willing to give their knowledge. And most of all, the audience who may be there, who have resources. We cannot translate time and knowledge into effective therapy and care for the patients without this building, without the resources to put together the infrastructure, the equipment, the technology. As you said, we have a MRI, a PET scan, we have a new building for the medical college opening up. All those have been possible in many ways because people have believed in what we do, and that is our message. Give us time, give us your knowledge. If you have resources, give those to us as well. And I'm asked often, when I was a medical student, I was going to a meeting in Dallas. I was at the airport. I saw this very diminutive Asian woman walking around with many people around her. It was Mother Teresa. She was going for the interview. So the interview, they asked Mother Teresa, this was America about 35 years ago, even longer. What do you want for us, for your Dharamsala in India? Shall we write you a check? She says, I need some funding, but I said, I want you to share. So the interviewer asked, what do you mean share? Share means if you have 2 loaves of bread, you eat only one, and you give me the other, it's giving me of your excesses. I don't want that. If you have 1 loaf of bread and you eat that for your family, give me a piece of that. That is sharing. I think we would like to get people's excesses, but also people to share with what they have. Because in sharing, there is joy because we will use those funds, that time, that knowledge to make life better for our patients.
Okay. So in, let's say, 5 years' time, when you look back, what do you want to have seen yourself as having achieved with the Women's Cancer Center?
Oh, that's easy. I want somebody else to do what I'm doing because I will be retired and my brain cells probably will not be functioning at high octane quality. I would like Kenyans to do what I'm doing. Which is we go back to education. We'll be having very soon a program, clinical investigator training program to train East Africans to do what I do. There was somebody who invested time and effort into me to make me who I am. My German parents in the malls in Heidelberg, my own parents, my mentor. So here I am. We should do the same thing so that we have local talent. That's one. The infrastructure we build here should be as good as any in North America or anywhere else. The clinical trial drugs, we should be so good that every pharmaceutical company wants to come to work with us. And I hope that our patients will trust us and will realize that we'd like to do this for the benefit of not just every person, but the future generation that comes. So 5 years from now, I'd like to have the Women's Center up and running. That's next year. I hope there will be donations, funding, we'll have recruitments. The year after, I would like to have a bone marrow transplant program here at AKU Nairobi. It does not exist in sub-Saharan Africa. The biggest cause of death for young children today is cancer after infections and accidents. Bone marrow transplantation is curative for those young kids for whom chemotherapy does not work. We can today mold your own immune cells and give them back to you to fight your cancer, because your immune system at the moment, when they look at cancer, says this is self. They look at your breast cancer, says, oh, this is part of my breast tissue. I shouldn't fight it. No, it's breast cancer, different from your breast tissue. The immune system needs to be reprogrammed. To do that, you need a bone marrow transplant, a cellular therapy program. So year 2, 2022, cellular therapy program. Year 3, by that time, I think we'll have a up and running functional space for research in women's cancer, prostate cancer, brain cancer, and then working together with Al Nasil Alani, who's in Karachi at the moment, and Zulmir Ali, Institute for Mind and Brain. We want to provide stem cell therapy here at AKU Nairobi. That's my vision in 5 years. If I can do even a bit of it, I want to do all of it. Then I can go back and go fishing.
Okay, good. I don't think I've ever met anyone who's as passionate as you are about cancer. And I think say, and probably the audience will agree, that you are the vision carrier. I mean, you haven't not had to refer to notes to say what you do. For me, AKU is in the right hands. Or the women.
I'm grateful. It has given me a good home. I am the product of this place. There have been people in my life who have helped me along. As I tell my family, my young children, my wife, who stays in Atlanta, and I'm here, I think this is the time to give, and there is joy in the successes when people say, yes, you made a difference. My whole team made a difference in my life. That is success.
Okay. So let's get to the questions from the audience. The first one is AKU working on collaborations or partnerships with other organizations to expand the scope of cancer research in East Africa?
So we have collaborations already in East Africa. We're working with even more of those. We should not be the ivory tower that stands alone. We want it for all. So we work with Kenyatta University, Nairobi University, in the upcoming vaccine study. We'll maybe the first ones to do the COVID vaccine, but we'll be working with Kenyatta, Nairobi University, Moi University in Eldoret. Those are the connections we need to make. And most importantly, the role I would like to play is not just for Kenya. I'd like to be sure that we in East Africa, AKU Nairobi, AKU Kampala very soon, AKHS Dar es Salaam, that we partner together as a network for the entire East Africa. And then we have our private, not-for-profit institution work with the public government institutions, because we cannot see all patients all the time. So that's one. We work with international partners all over the world. We are working with our cousin university in Karachi to do research together, something we've not done before. We've got campuses in Afghanistan, in Tajikistan. So AKU is in 6 countries. We would like cancer to be talked about in all 6 countries, and AKU campus Nairobi should be one that probably is heard. The voices are heard. So we do work with the public institutions and private institutions and government agencies. I just had a meeting before we had this call with the IARC, Institute for Academic Research, Cancer Research in Paris. We're working with them as well. We work with the University of Nova in Portugal. We applied for a big grant recently, didn't get it, but the next one will be ours. So I think we have and the Cancer Center has a memorandum of understanding with UAB, Fred Hutch, a variety of linkages. We are indeed networked completely.
Okay. This next question, I think, is usually one of them. I think it's actually the top question that people ask anytime they need to see a doctor for anything, not just cancer. Cost. It's usually one of the biggest even barriers to healthcare. So this next question is asking, how do patients in East Africa who are underprivileged and lack the financial means access the high quality care offered by AKU for treatment like cancer?
Very good question. Innocent reminded me that one of our biggest linkages in Tanzania is with Julia Mekani, a very well-known sickle cell expert. Tanzania has the sixth biggest population of sickle cell, which causes morbidity and mortality in early age. And she is really one of the world experts in Tanzania, international experts. We'll be working with her in AKHS Dar es Salaam to establish a sickle cell center at the hospital in Dar es Salaam and do transplantation. So just to go back to say that we are working with every country in East Africa. Going back to cost, it is true, in America, there's Blue Cross Blue Shield, there is Medicare, Medicaid, automatic. Here, when I write a prescription for something, you've got to go pay for it. Before you get it, it delays things. Experimental therapy will be paid for by the sponsor, will not cost the patient. Number one. Those things we do, which are standard of care, I believe should be paid for by public sector NHIF or insurance. But those who cannot afford, which is why the Chancellor says access and relevance. When we did the Impacta study, Roche Pharmaceuticals for COVID severe pneumonia, even those patients who could not afford it because NHIF had run out, there was ability to top off that little gap that existed. But experimental therapy and everything we do in the name of research will not cost the patient anything. That is a commitment made by the sponsor, a commitment made by us, because it is after all a study. But we would expect that the public sector will do its part as well, because I do not think it would be fair to put the burden completely on sponsors or the private institutions. But it should not cost a patient to get access to best care.
Okay. This next question, Professor Mansoor, is, I think, related to the multidisciplinary approach to breast cancer care. Can you please let us know if you charge extra for nutrition and other consulting, including counseling? And then this one interesting. Why is consulting on nutrition from London? We have good ones locally and also who understand local food and diets.
Very good question. Tell this woman to apply. I will offer her a job if it's a woman or a man. The issue is, it is true. The woman, the patient who talked to me, say, Dr. Saleh, I'm told sugar is not good. Should I avoid sugar? I said, no, it's not going to do very much unless you eat too much of it and you'll get diabetes or you'll get high blood sugar. I said, but because you've got breast cancer, you should avoid tofu. She says, I do not know what tofu is. My colleague says, we don't eat tofu here. So you're right.
We don't know what.
Alia Nedugandhi in London, who's studying nutrition in the context of health, will be linking up with a Kenyan so that her knowledge will be put into Kenyan context. So we not talk about fish and chips, but we talk about ugali and things that are relevant to us. So the answer is absolutely yes. We'll be putting it into East African context. But the knowledge that we have from the West, we need to apply to us. So I think we do get information and counseling from outside. Psychosocial counseling, it is absolutely true. We do not have enough expertise for cancer psychosocial counseling. To train ourselves here, we need help from outside. So I think it is really exactly what I do. What I do here would not have been possible had I stayed in East Africa. But coming back allows me to train others. So I would expect people from the outside who are partners to help train local talent so that we can mix together and provide care and knowledge that is relevant to our people.
So does that nutrition consulting and counseling cost the patient extra, or is it part of the package?
So what we said is when we began with the multidisciplinary breast cancer clinic, it is totally free. You see 5 consultants, 5 physicians, nurse, clinical researcher. It's totally no charge. It would have been a big bill for the patient. It provides you your cancer journey in a nutshell, and then you go and see the individual consultants later. That is free of charge. If you're an AKU patient, it's free of charge to you. If you come from outside, there may be a nominal charge. The consulting we talked about by Zoom, free of charge, the first session. Subsequently, clearly we have to monetize this. We have to be able to at least self-sustain it. And there may be a charge in the future, but the initial consultation, psychosocial counseling, as well as nutrition counseling for the MBC patients will be free of charge if you're an AKU patient.
That's some good news.
Yes.
Now, yeah, some good news. This one, so this question, if you were a key decision maker in the corporate world and you're watching today, as part of the audience, what would you want to ask from them, from your women's cancer, for your women's center, for the Women's Cancer Center?
Well, I think I've got a couple of messages. When we did, and I want to be a little bit critical, when we did the Impactor study for tocilizumab for severe COVID pneumonia, the first thing we heard from insurance companies, a patient who is on a clinical trial, we will not pay. That is not fair. The sponsor is paying for experimental therapy. You, the insurance company, should pay for standard of care therapy. So that is a must. We're giving a multidisciplinary care consultation to our patients totally free of charge. 7 individuals spend an hour with one patient, or we spend 5 hours today with 7 patients, no charge to the insurance company nor to the patient. But that treatment has to be paid for by either NHIF or the sponsor or the insurance company. So I would say in the corporate world, inform your people, invite me and my colleagues to talk about early detection, prevention of cancer. And when they do have cancer, give them time off, support them so they can get the best of care. That would be my plea to the industry at large if I was talking to them or if I was one of them.
You had mentioned about sharing their piece of bread. I mean, if their budgets can allow and part of the CSR budget, wouldn't it be one of the things that you would want them to share to the cancer center?
Ask me the question again. I didn't get it.
No, I'm saying you'd meant when you're giving the analogy of Mother Teresa about sharing. So if the corporate world, if their budget, let's say the CSR budget, can allow parts of the funds to come to the Women's Cancer Center, wouldn't you ask for that?
Absolutely. In fact, I think it will also be tax deductible. I think every major corporation has funds for community service. And you can take your pick. You can take it for children. You can take it for accident prevention. You can take it for the homeless. Cancer is going to be one of the biggest killers of our nation. So you would see that a majority of patients who develop cancer are become isolated. They do not talk about it. They're chastised by their community. Even there where they work, they have to take time off, which is one more reason why women, at least the MBC patients, have been neglecting, delaying. I would think that philanthropists, well-wishers, donors, but also major corporations, if they have a budget set aside for healthcare, I think the CRU of the Alcan University will be the recipient. It'll be transparent. You will see that that money will turn and improve lives, and we'll be very transparent about what we do.
I think I'll send you an invoice for giving you that point.
Okay, sounds good.
So the next question is saying, and I think I agree with this, we need more people like you in East Africa, people who are born and raised in East Africa and can take your good work forward. How are you and AKU training local doctors, oncologists, etc., etc.? Like really, how are you building that capacity to carry on this good work so that it's not just done today and in a few years when Dr. Mansoor has gone on retire and started fishing, there's no one to take up the good work.
Yeah, I should tell you that I just happen to be the spokesman of the day. We have Innocent here. You know, I've got a team of 15 people who do research. We have one young woman who came from Dallas, Noreen, who joined me from Dallas. Everybody else is Kenyan. Innocent, Grace, Joyce, Aislinn came to Alabama to be trained. In the meantime, we've got Elda, Stacy, all of them, all Kenyans. We have a research program we'll set up for ourselves and for physicians at AKU to be trained as clinical investigators. If I get a grant that I applied for from the American Cancer Society, the clinical investigator training program, something that I did in Alabama and we published for 5 years up in Alabama, worked very well to train young clinicians to become investigators like me. We will open that up for the entire East Africa. Public and private sector physicians will be trained to become researchers like me. I can tell you that there's incredible talent. They just do not have the opportunity. We will give them the opportunity. And I think we would like to work, very much so. But you know, nothing comes free. No pain, no gain. So those who want to become a little bit like me and my colleagues, will have to spend time and effort. As I've said before, a good researcher has to have the gene turned on. A good doctor is not necessarily a good researcher. My job is to turn the gene on. It continues. I think I could do it. I just need people to say, here, take me on, train me. We will do that.
Okay, all right. So does
Mercy,
AKU...
you should come and become an oncology fellow with me. I may not be paying as much as you get in the media, but I think you could do 50-50, 75-25.
We can talk about that after this. So this next question is actually straight at the doorstep of media. So does AKU work with the media or the public sector to run campaigns to raise awareness of the importance of early detection? If it is key in survival rates, how do we get this message out to all women and all men?
We do that. You know, AKU Nairobi does this. AKHS Mombasa does it. I just talked with the team in Mombasa. AKHS Dar es Salaam does it. The biggest trouble, though, is when we do early detection and find something, who pays for that so that that woman really gets the best of care for the continuum of care? Doing breast examination or mammography is the easiest and the cheapest. But then you need a biopsy, pathology, surgery, radiation, chemotherapy. We lose women because the public sector does not fund that part. I think we need to have a conversation. March is the month for colon cancer. I talked with the University of Michigan. They said we will fund half of the campaign for early detection of colon cancer. Very common in Kenya, not uncommon, very common in Kenya. And my question was, once we find that lesion, which is early, we need to get funding so that that person really gets a survival advantage. Identifying pathology is not sufficient. We need to really identify the means to cure that patient with pathology. That's where public-private partnership has to come into play.
So really just going from point A to Z. Okay, 2 more questions. This is very specific. Can you share more information about stem cell therapies and how cancer therapies are connected to this?
So we should have, Fatima should have Alan Silalani give a talk like this one. He's the expert. He's the director of the Regenerative Stem Cell Research Center. And, an important objective of the Chancellor that we should have something like this in the developing world. Stem cells are those very early cells, those seeds that can become any tree or any fruit. That's a stem cell. A stem cell can become an eye, can become cells of the brain, cells of the bone marrow. So if you have a damaged organ or a damaged system, that stem cell put in the right environment can replace and rebuild and regenerate that lost tissue. That is regenerative stem cells. Stem cells for cancer, you have cancer stem cells. Cancer also have those very malignant seeds. When we give chemotherapy, we may be just killing off the top of the tree. We need to get to the root, to the seed. So we, in cancer therapy, using targeted therapy, are also trying to get to the seed of the cancer source to kill it. That is what provides cure. So we have regenerative stem cell, regenerating normal tissue using this very early cells that can become any organ. On our side, we need to kill the cancer stem cell, that seed that has become malignant. So those are 2 aspects of looking at this cancer cell. A good cancer cell that makes everything, and the bad cancer cell that causes death because it metastasizes and causes cancer.
Okay, then our last question, it's a bit lengthy. If cancer drugs haven't been tested on indigenous people in Africa, what about all other drugs? What I mean is drugs for any other ailment, all other drugs for any other ailment. Are chemo drugs tested on Kenyans before being used? Is the coronavirus vaccine being tested on Kenyans? There's some speculation that there's a specific thing about Africans, and that's why there's been fewer cases in Africa.
So let me take the last. We have fewer cases in Africa because we don't report as well, but it may be that our immune system is different, that we've been exposed to malaria, TB, HIV, etc., that our immune system has built an environment of protection. We do not know that, but we will find out because we at AKU are doing research to see is the immune system of our healthcare workers already protected against COVID. We'll find out. The COVID vaccine study that we're doing specifically, that is Pasteur from, Sanofi Pasteur from France, wants to have minorities, Africans, so that this vaccine, when available, if positive, also applies to us in the developing world. And I think the question is, there's some chemotherapies, it is like a bullet. It will work. But the big bullet may not even get to the enemy if it does not really target the heart of the enemy. So the question we have is, does every bullet work for everyone? Most will. They will really kill the cancer. But it may be that the way we metabolize the drug, the toxicity of the drug, may be different for us. So it's not that they will not work, but the efficiency, the efficacy, the toxicity may be different. So we need to identify those nuances. When I talk to my colleagues in Karachi, at the AKU Karachi, they say, we reduced the chemotherapy drugs for a patient by 20%. Why? Because it's too toxic. Is it toxic because we are malnourished and we should have better nutrition? Is it toxic because we metabolize the drug differently, then we have to give a different dose? What is the outcome in terms of efficacy of a 20% dose reduction? We don't know that. We need to be able to find the data. I don't think it's not that it doesn't work, but it may work differently. The outcome may be different. The side effect may be different, which is why we would like these drugs to be tested on our people, to be able to have those nuances, which are slightly different. And there may be some diseases we have that are quite different than the ones in the West. So that's where we provide knowledge, because after all, the pharmaceutical company would like to sell their drugs to us for profit. It's very fair. But if they do so, we need to be informed about their activity in our people. And in all this, I think, I'd like to say that it is fundamental that places like the CRU that really are supported, that we will bring talent, we will have physicians, nurses, specialists. And I really want to go out and laud the individuals who donate. This floor was donated by a good donor, a Kenyan. It would not be possible for us to do this. So I think every donor who in his heart can either give their time and volunteer for us. We need many of those volunteers for the COVID vaccine study we are about to do, because we need many volunteers. Those who have knowledge, the young woman or man who said, I'm a nutritionist, come, we may find you a job for all you know, and we will treat you. And you can work with my colleague in London. And then resources, every resources, a floor, a space, funding, Mother Teresa's half of a bread, we can all give in some way.
Mansoor, it's always a pleasure talking to you and having a chat with you about cancer. Any final thoughts that you may have?
No, the drug called hope is real. Tumaini is real. I think we should support the drug called hope. There are many who do this. I'm just a spokesman for all here. And this is our way of paying back to our people. And I go back to the Chancellor's word. To whom much is given, much is also expected. And I think the enlightening, the spark of light that comes from us will ignite, and the glow will help all. That is our work. That is our job.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much for your insights. I consider you as a champion for women's health, specifically cancer. And you can see the passion as you talk about women and women's cancer. So personally, I wish you all the best. We'll support you in every way we can, because this is all of us are invested in it. It's our health, all of us at the end of the day, because cancer can get anyone. So thank you very much for your valued time. Thank you for your audience and for all of you that have sent in questions. I hope that we have answered all of them. If not, you can still send to us via connecting.webinars@aku.edu, connecting.webinars@aku.edu, and we'll be happy to have those questions answered even offline. But other than that, I have nothing else but to thank you for your valued time. Thank you, Dr. Mansoor. Thank you, Kevin, and everyone that has made this possible. Fatima, on the other hand, thank you very much, everyone that has made it possible. Thank you, Innocent. And I wish all of you a good day, a good evening, and God bless. Please stay safe out of COVID's way. We still need people to carry on some of these activities that we are discussing here.
Mercy, can I ask Fatima for 2 minutes? Because it's Thanksgiving in America. I want to read a Thanksgiving message. Is it possible? Can the moderator allow me that?
The moderator is allowed.
Yes. So, today's Thanksgiving. It's a big holiday in America. We'll all be barbecuing. We don't need to do that because of COVID. But in 1963, John F. Kennedy sent this message to the public when he was the president. He recalled Abraham Lincoln, who established Thanksgiving as a holiday to give thanks. And I will read from that message from John F. Kennedy. He takes, on this anointed day, they, the Americans who landed in America, give reverence and thanks for their safety, for the health of their children, for the fertility of their fields, for the love which bound them together, and for the faith which united them with their God. Yet, as our powers have grown, so has our peril. Today we give our thanks most of all for the ideals of honor and faith we inherited from our forefathers, for the humility they possessed, which we must seek every day to emulate. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by those words. And that is my last message. Happy Thanksgiving, Asante. Mercy, thank you very much. Come and join us any day. Yeah, take care.
Thank you, Professor Mansoor. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day. God bless.
Goodbye.
Bye.